Once upon a time, in a small village surrounded by soft hills and golden fields, lived an old storyteller named Ravi. He was known throughout the land not for his wealth or power, but for the way he made people feel. Children gathered around him after school, elders visited him for peace of mind, and travelers sought his wisdom before continuing their journeys. People said he carried the secret of happiness, not in a box or a book, but in his heart. Every evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Ravi would sit beneath a neem tree with a lantern beside him. He'd tell stories, tales that weren't just for amusement, but for the soul. His voice, deep and calming, wove pictures in the minds of his listeners. It was there, on a warm evening in spring, that he decided to share the most important story of all, the one about discovering the true secret of happiness. But Ravi did not simply tell people what happiness was. No, he took them on a journey, step by step, through the lives of people who had chased riches, power, knowledge, and love, only to find that happiness did not live where they expected. In the hush of twilight, the crowd gathered under the tree. Mothers rocked sleepy children. Young men leaned in, curious. The air was filled with the scent of jasmine and cooked lentils drifting from nearby homes. And as the first star appeared in the sky, Ravi began. Once upon a time, he said, there was a boy who thought happiness was far away, hidden in places he could not reach. But life, as he would learn, has a strange way of teaching us that the treasure we seek outside is often waiting quietly within. And so, the journey into the secret of happiness began. In a village not too far from where Ravi once lived, there was a boy named Kavi. He was the son of a simple potter, but his eyes were always on the stars. While his father shaped clay into bowls and vases, Kavi dreamed of golden palaces and silk clothes. Every time a trader passed through their dusty town with jewels or spices, Kavi's imagination would take flight. One day, he would whisper to himself, I will be rich, then I will be happy. Kavi believed happiness lived in gold. So, when he turned 18, he left home with nothing but a bundle of clothes and a heart full of dreams. He followed the roads that merchants traveled, offering to carry goods in exchange for a few coins or a meal. Months passed, then years. Kavi became stronger, cleverer. He learned to trade small goods, bangles, sweets, fabrics. Slowly, his pouches filled with silver and copper, and soon, a few pieces of gold. But he was not satisfied. In a large city by the sea, Kavi opened a shop. He sold perfumes, silks, and rare teas. His business grew. He bought a house. He hired helpers. People began to call him Kavi the Wealthy. Yet every night, when he returned to his grand home, there was a strange emptiness. He ate alone. He smiled at no one. His heart, once full of dreams, now felt heavy. One day, an old woman came into his shop. Her clothes were simple, her hands wrinkled. She bought nothing. She only looked at him and said, You carry wealth in your hands but not in your eyes. Why do you look so tired, son? Kavi was surprised. No one had ever asked him that, not since he left his village. He answered, Because I have everything I wanted, but still feel like I have nothing. The woman nodded. Then you must return, not to find gold, but to remember where joy lives. That night, Kavi couldn't sleep. He thought of his father's hands, rough with clay. He remembered the laughter around their small dinner table. He saw the old neem tree where he had first imagined his rich future. The next morning, Kavi closed his shop, packed only what he needed, and began the long walk back home. When he arrived, the village had changed. Children who once played with him now had children of their own. His father's hut was still there, though a little older, a little smaller. His father stood outside, grey-haired and surprised. "Kavi?" the potter asked. "I came home, Baba," Kavi said, tears rising in his eyes. His father hugged him tightly. That night, they sat on the floor eating rice and lentils, laughing over old stories. There was no gold, no silk, but Kavi felt full. It was in that moment, watching his father smile, hearing the fire crackle, that Kavi realized something. Happiness had never been in the gold. It had always been in the simple, quiet moments he had left behind. From that day on, Kavi chose to live differently. He didn't stop working or earning, but he made time for meals with friends, for morning walks, for laughter, and slowly, that heavy feeling disappeared. Ravi paused in his story and looked around at the faces under the neem tree. Kavi sought gold and found emptiness, but when he returned to what mattered, he found joy again. The children nodded, the elders smiled, and Ravi, the old storyteller, moved to the next chapter of his tale. In a small desert town far from the sea, there lived a woman named Mira. Every morning, before the sun rose, she would walk miles to collect water for her family. The path was rocky and long, and the pots were heavy, yet Mira never complained. She sang as she walked, her voice floating through the quiet air. Her neighbors often said, "How can she be so cheerful doing such hard work?" Some even whispered, "Surely, she has no ambition. She only carries water." But Mira had a secret. While others saw her journey as a burden, she saw it as a gift. Each step gave her time to think. Each song was a prayer of thanks. The rhythm of her routine became her meditation. She lived with her 2 children and her elderly mother in a simple mud house. They had little, no television, no modern kitchen, no fine clothes, but there was always laughter. In the evenings, they sat outside on mats, sharing stories. Mira cooked with love, served with joy, and listened with patience. One day, a young visitor named Rahul came to the village. He was from the city, sent by an NGO to survey water scarcity. He noticed Mira each morning and was curious about her. "You walk all this way every day? Don't you wish for a pump or a machine?" Mira smiled. "Of course it would help, but until then, I walk, and while I walk, I sing. That keeps my heart light." Rahul was puzzled. In the city, he had everything: gadgets, fast food, a car, yet he was always tired, always anxious. One evening, he visited Mira's home. He expected silence and sorrow, but he found laughter, the smell of fresh chapati, and children playing with stones as toys. They welcomed him warmly. "This is how you live every day?" he asked. "Yes," Mira replied, "not rich in things, but rich in peace." That night, Rahul could not sleep. He thought of his busy life, his loneliness in a crowd, his phone always buzzing but never truly connecting him to others. He realized that what Mira had was rare, a content heart. Before he left the village, he asked her, "How did you learn to be happy with so little?" She answered gently, "Because I learned to see with different eyes, not what I lack, but what I have, not how far I walk, but the beauty on the way." When Ravi finished this part of the story, the listeners sat in silence. Mira taught that happiness isn't in comfort. He said, "It's in how you see your life, in gratitude." In routine, in quiet joy. A young woman near the front wiped a tear. A man in the back nodded slowly. And the lantern beside Ravi flickered on as he turned the page for the next tale. In the ancient city of Varanasi, known for its sacred river and grand temples, lived a young scholar named Dev. He was brilliant, top of his class, admired by teachers, envied by peers. Every day, Dev studied for hours. He read thick books, solved complex problems, and memorized endless facts. People said he was destined for greatness. But while his mind was full, his heart was empty. Dev rarely laughed. He had no friends. He skipped festivals, ignored celebrations, and often looked out the window with tired eyes. One day, he told himself, "When I become a great professor, then I'll be happy." Years passed. Dev won awards, wrote papers, and received offers from famous universities, but something felt missing. Even as he stood on stages receiving applause, his face stayed cold. The joy he expected never arrived. One day, he returned to Varanasi to visit the river. He sat on the steps of the ghat, watching children splash in the water. A small boy, no older than 8, ran up to him and asked, "Why do you look so sad, uncle?" Dev blinked. "I'm not sad," he said, forcing a smile. "But your face forgot how to smile," the boy replied. The words hit Dev like a stone. He watched the boy run back to a group of friends playing with paper boats. They laughed loudly, their joy filling the air. Dev sat there for hours, thinking. Later, he walked through the city's narrow lanes and came across an old music shop. The sound of a sitar drifted out. Inside, the shopkeeper played with his eyes closed, swaying gently. "That's beautiful," Dev said. The man opened his eyes. "You look like a man who has read many books but hasn't danced once in his life." Dev laughed, a real laugh, the first in years. "Come in," the shopkeeper offered. "Let's play a tune together." Dev hesitated, then stepped inside. The sitar felt strange in his hands, but slowly, he followed the rhythm. Music filled the room, and something unlocked inside him. From that day, Dev returned to the shop often. He started teaching at a local school, not just math and science, but also storytelling and art. His students adored him. He smiled more. He even danced during festivals. When people asked what changed, he replied, "I stopped living only in my mind and started living with my heart." As Ravi closed this part of the tale, the fireflies danced in the night air. Dev shows us, Ravi said, that knowledge can fill your brain, but happiness needs your heart. Sometimes, we forget to smile because we forget to live. The children near the tree whispered to each other. One boy began to hum softly. And Ravi, the old storyteller, smiled before beginning the next story. In a green valley framed by distant mountains, a farmer named Arul lived with his wife and 2 children. His fields were small, his tools simple, and the weather often unpredictable. Yet every morning, Arul walked to his land with steady steps and a calm heart. He talked to his crops as if they were friends, touched the soil like it was treasure, and worked with quiet determination. His neighbors often worried. "The rains are late this year," they said. "What if the wind ruins the harvest again? What will you do then, Arul?" Arul would simply smile and say, "Then we'll begin again. The earth teaches patience." One year, the wind was cruel. Just days before the harvest, a great storm came down from the mountains. It tore through the valley like an angry spirit. Crops were flattened, Roofs flew like birds. People cried, shouted, cursed the skies. When it was over, the land lay in silence, broken and brown. But Arul did not scream. He sat on a rock beside his ruined field and listened to the wind. His son, Ravi, just 10 years old, sat beside him. "Why aren't you angry, Papa?" the boy asked. "Because anger won't rebuild the crop, my son," Arul said softly. "And maybe, just maybe, the wind came to teach us something." The next day, while others stayed home in sadness, Arul began clearing the field. His wife joined him, then his son, then his daughter. They worked in silence, their hands blistered but their eyes steady. Within weeks, they planted again, not rice this time, but lentils, which needed less rain. Arul dug channels to collect what little water came. He read old books about drought farming. He listened to elders who had seen worse. By the end of the season, their lentils grew, not tall or golden, but strong. They harvested enough to eat, enough to sell. They survived. People asked him, "How did you stay so calm? How did you not give up?" Arul replied, "Because I do not fight the wind. I listen to it. I learn from it." Later that year, the village honored him, not because he had grown the most, but because he had lost the most and still stood tall. As Ravi, the storyteller, finished this tale, the wind itself whispered through the neem branches. Arul teaches us, he said, that happiness is not the absence of storms, but the ability to stand through them with patience, with love, and with faith. The listeners breathed deeply. The story had wrapped around them like a soft shawl. And then Ravi said, "Let me tell you of a man who thought fame would make him happy. In a bustling city alive with lights and noise, there lived a man named Rishi. He was a talented musician, his voice was smooth like velvet, and when he played the flute, even birds seemed to stop and listen. From a young age, Rishi knew he was special. People applauded when he sang at festivals. His teachers told him he would be famous. Rishi believed that happiness came from applause. The louder the crowd, the fuller his heart would be, or so he thought. He chased bigger and bigger stages. Traveling from city to city, he appeared on local television, performed in concert halls, and was cheered by thousands. His name began to appear on posters. People recognized him in the street. But fame is a strange companion. It claps for you when you succeed, but forgets you when you fall. Rishi started to worry before each performance. What if they don't cheer this time? What if I lose my voice? The joy of music began to fade. He stopped singing for fun. He only sang to please the crowd. One evening, after a show in a faraway town, Rishi returned to his hotel room and stared at the mirror. He was tired, not just in his body, but in his spirit. The applause had ended, the stage lights were off, and the silence in the room was deafening. "Why don't I feel happy?" he whispered to himself. "Wasn't this my dream?" He remembered something then, a street in his childhood neighborhood where he had once played music for free. Just him and a few curious children. No stage, no pressure, only laughter and dancing. The next day, Rishi made a decision. He cancelled a tour. He returned to his old neighborhood. At first, people were shocked to see him. The famous Rishi? Back here? But Rishi didn't come for fame. He came for peace. He began giving free music lessons to children. He played in the park again, not for money or applause, but for joy. And something magical happened. His music became softer, fuller, true. The children adored him. The old folks smiled when they heard his flute. He laughed more. He slept better. People still clapped sometimes, but Rishi no longer needed it, because now he played for the happiness it brought to others and to himself. As Ravi finished this part of the tale under the neem tree, someone in the crowd whispered, "He's like our Rishi, telling stories, not for fame, but for love." Ravi smiled. "Fame," he said, "can be a shadow. It grows and shrinks with the sun. But joy, real joy, comes when we do what we love, for the right reasons." He looked up at the stars above. "And now," he said, "let me tell you about the final lesson of someone who searched for love to feel whole." In a dry village where nothing seemed to grow, lived a girl named Anaya. She was only 12, but her spirit was as wide as the sky. Her parents worked long hours, trying to make ends meet. Most days, they returned home with tired eyes and empty hands. Their home was bare, no garden, no colors, only dust and stone. But Anaya dreamed of flowers. She had once seen a picture of a blooming meadow in her schoolbook, and since then, it had lived in her heart. One morning, she found a torn paper bag near the market. Inside were seeds. She didn't know what kind they were, but she held them like treasure. That afternoon, she dug a small patch of earth behind their hut, poured water from the little clay pot, and whispered, "Please grow." People laughed. "In this land, flowers don't grow here." But Anaya watered the soil every day. She hummed to it. She covered it when the sun was too harsh and removed stones one by one. Days turned into weeks. Still, nothing. Her mother said gently, "Maybe try something else, my child." But Anaya smiled. "Hope is a seed too, Mama." One morning, a tiny green shoot peeked through, then another. Soon, little buds appeared, yellow, red, blue. Her garden was no bigger than a mat, but it was alive. Children came to look. Elders stopped to rest beside it. The dull village corner now held beauty. Anaya didn't stop. She shared her water. She gave seeds to neighbors. A boy planted marigolds. A woman grew mint. Slowly, patch by patch, the village changed, not just in color, but in heart. People began to smile more. Doors were painted. Songs returned to cooking pots. Even the old schoolmaster began teaching under a flowering tree. One day, a visitor from a nearby town came. He asked, "Who started this?" All fingers pointed to the little girl with the watering can. "Why did you do it?" he asked her. Anaya replied, "Because I wanted something beautiful to look at. But now I see, when you plant joy, it grows in everyone." As Ravi finished the final story, the village under the neem tree sat in silence. Then came the applause, not loud, but full, not because of drama, but because of truth. Ravi leaned back and said, "And that, dear friends, is the secret of happiness. Not gold, not books, not crowds, not calm weather, not even love from others, but love from within. The courage to plant joy in your own corner of the world." And under the soft light of his lantern, the storyteller closed his book. As the last words of Ravi's tale faded into the night air, silence hung like mist among the villagers. No one moved. No one spoke. It was as if they feared a single sound might erase the warmth his story had left behind. Then, slowly, people began to smile, not because of something funny, but because of something deep, something true. A little boy clapped quietly. An elder wiped his eyes, and Ravi looked around, his heart full. He had not promised treasure, but he had given something more valuable, a map to happiness. What was the secret, really? It was not in the gold the boy chased. It was not in the water the woman carried. It was not in the books the scholar memorized. It was not in the silence of the wind-blown fields. It was not in the applause the musician received. And it was not in the flowers the girl planted. Yet, somehow, each of those lives revealed a part of it. True happiness, Ravi had shown, is not a destination. It is not a goal that waits for you to arrive. It is not something that can be bought, forced, or borrowed. It is a way of walking, a way of seeing, a way of being. It is in choosing love over fear, gratitude over complaint, patience over panic, service over self, presence over performance. It is in doing small things with great care, in smiling when no one is watching, in dancing even if no one claps, in planting seeds, not knowing if they will grow, but hoping they do. Ravi's stories remind us that every one of us is a seeker. We all wander through life with questions in our hearts. Am I enough? Is this all there is? How can I be happy? And the answers often hide not in new places, but in new perspectives. Maybe the secret of happiness is not something we find. Maybe it is something we uncover, like light beneath dust, already inside us. So, dear listener, when the world grows loud, and your path feels unclear, remember, you don't have to chase happiness. You can grow it. You grow it by listening, by slowing down, by helping one another, by loving even when it's hard, by laughing often and crying without shame. You grow it, not when life is perfect, but when you choose joy anyway. That night under the neem tree, Ravi packed his lantern and stood up. Children hugged him, elders blessed him, and he walked home not as a man with answers, but as someone who had shared the questions that mattered. In the hearts of those who listened, something had changed. They might still have troubles, their homes might still be small, but they would rise tomorrow with a new light in their eyes. Because now, they knew, happiness isn't hidden in distant lands or future dreams. It's here, it's now, it's in you. And sometimes, all it takes is a story to remind you